Hi, hello. It's Sunday，咁今日星期日啦。It's still a gorgeous, beautiful day，繼續都係好好天啦。So I don't really have a plan，我都冇乜計劃嘅。might want to go out，我都係想出去行下啦咁樣樣。But I'm still sort of like, just being spontaneous 咁我但係即係都有少少即係即興啦，咁睇下到時想去邊就邊啦咁樣樣。From where I'm staying right now， 由我呢一度而家住嘅呢個地方咧，if I have to walk to the city centre and the old town, where's all these happenings are， 咁如果我要行去市中心啦，即係舊城啊，即係旅遊區啊嗰啲咧，咁it's about like 45 minutes an hour。大概係45分鐘至1個鐘啦，我行。So it's alright because like it's actually like an entire walk by the beaches。咁因為其實係 OK 嘅，沿海旁行就係一路都係海灘啦咁樣樣。There were a few points that I had to like sort of detour a little bit because there were constructions。咁雖然有啲地方佢哋係即係整緊啊，咁我就可能要即係兜少少路行啦。But in general, it's quite a pleasant walk, especially if there is no rain。咁但係主要嚟講都係容易行嘅路啦，好行嘅路啦。咁唔落雨就得啦。Because it had been raining， 咁因為我嚟嗰2日都係落雨啦，咁 and it's quite heavy and it's also like all day。咁同埋都落得大啦，同埋都係即係全日咁樣落啦。Some of the roads were flooded， 咁有啲路咧其實係水浸嘅。And it was still flooded yesterday。咁譬如琴日咁咧都仲係水浸嘅。When I was taking a bus back here， 咁我琴日搭巴士翻嚟啦學人 ，and one of these roads was still flooded and we were literally like sort of driving in sort of like a small creek。咁嗰條路係即係仲係浸住咧，我哋基本上架巴士係即係基本上係好似喺個溪澗度咁樣樣係渡過啦咁樣樣。Transportation is not really that convenient here。要搭公共交通工具唔係咁容易或者咁方便嘅。They need like some kind of let's say like a metro card or like an octopus card in Hong Kong, so it's a prepaid card。咁佢哋要有一張smart card 啦，咁好似我哋八達通咁樣樣嘅。So you have to charge it， 咁你就要即係加錢入去啦 ，and then you would just like use it when you get on board。咁你上車嘅時候就要嘟啦咁樣樣。The problem right now is that they run out of these cards to sell。咁但係而家問題就係咧，佢哋呢一度就係冇卡賣，即係唔知佢點解啦，即係可能佢賣晒，總之未有新嘅生產啦咁。So and I cannot just get on the bus and pay them with cash。我又唔可以就咁跳上巴士俾現金嘅咁樣樣啦。So for me to get to town， 咁所以如果我係要出去嘅話咧 ，I would either have to take a taxi， 咁我一係要坐的士啦。I mean use any kind of like car driving app, sharing app。咁一係就係 Uber 嗰啲咁樣樣啦 ，or I would just walk。咁一係就係行啦咁樣樣。There are ways to take collective taxis。佢哋有一啲咧就係泥鯭的咁樣，大家一齊夾錢坐 ，and that would be way cheaper。咁就會平好多嘅。But because I don't really speak the language， 咁我又唔識講西班牙文啦咁樣 ，so it's kind of difficult for me to maneuver the system。Just yet， 咁所以而家我就好難話，即係我又走去學人搭泥鯭的咁樣樣啦。So we'll see。咁我哋睇下，即係之後，即係我可能即係西班牙文好啲嘅時候，可能可以做到呢件事啦咁樣。But I'm alright with walking， 咁我都 OK 可以行嘅咁樣。And so it's sort of like that。But yesterday I was just trying to like if I walk out then maybe I can catch the bus back home because there's this huge station in Central that。You can buy a ticket from them。咁因為喺市中心佢哋會有大站啦，咁大站就會有票務，咁所以你就可以喺票務處度買飛。Yesterday I got like a one passage kind of like single ticket。咁我琴日就係去即係票務站嗰度就係買一張單程飛啦，所謂咁樣。But you don't actually have a ticket。咁但係其實你唔會有飛嘅。It's actually the staff took your money， 咁佢哋就收咗你錢啦 ，and then。She would use the staff card to sort of get me through the gate。咁佢就會用佢嗰張八達通卡就嘟我入閘咁樣樣咯。 So here is like the bus station is sort of just like a huge platform in the middle of the road. 咁佢呢度個巴士站咧就係即係嗰個大嘅巴士站啦。So we're talking about this huge station, not like just by the road, OK？ 唔係嗰啲平時嘅巴士站啦，大站啦咁。佢就好似係路中心有個月台咁嘅。So you have to get your ticket or use your own metro card to gain access inside the platform， 咁你就需要拍卡，然後先可以入到閘啦。And then inside you will find your numbers and just find your own sort of like doorway to wait for your buses。咁你就要揾到你自己嗰個閘門，咁然後喺嗰度等你嗰架車啦咁樣樣。And there would be a few buses at a single gateway。咁然後每一個閘門其實都係會有幾架巴士嘅，所以 you have to really pay attention。咁你就一定要好小心睇清楚啦咁。I was lucky， 咁我琴日超好彩啦。It was a little bit like of a communication kind of, you know, like, oh, I don't know what you mean, you know, which bus, and but like the staff was so nice， 咁職員好好啦，即係琴日都溝通麻麻地嘅咁。So he took me to the gateway， 咁佢帶咗我去我要上車嗰個位啦咁。And then I bumped into the host of my Airbnb， 咁然後喺嗰個閘口嗰度我就即係撞到咧，我而家 book 呢個 Airbnb 即係個屋主即係喺呢一度當地嘅即係總之幫我 check in 嘅人啦咁樣樣。So yeah, so like she practically just like show me, you know, how to get off and tell me, you know, like if I want to get on the bus, where should I get it on, blah blah blah. And she was speaking to me the whole time in Spanish 咁佢基本上就教我落車啊、成啊咁啦。咁但係其實佢 keep 住同我講西班牙文啦。I think I might understand probably like 10% of it。我可能應該明1成到啦。And most of the time like OK 咁我都係扮聽得明啦，估下咁樣樣。But I'm so looking forward to the day that I can actually understand her, and which I know would happen. 咁我超級期待我有一日即係突然之間會聽得明佢講嘢啦咁我知道一定會發生嘅咁樣。And which is the joy of learning a new language。其實係我覺得學新語言最正最爽嘅，即係最奇妙嘅時刻啦咁樣樣。So it's like the most wonderful moment of learning a new language is that moment like you realize。You actually understand something from zero, like it's just this journey is just crazy。咁就係即係由零到突然之間，嘣一聲點解大家聽明晒咁樣咧？係好神奇嘅過程嚟嘅。So we're going to read again. This is the last two paragraphs of the Second Opium War part。咁呢個就係第二次鴉片戰爭嘅最後嘅兩段啦，咁樣樣。So it talks more a bit about like the mentality of the Hong Kongers who were leaving at the time。咁其實佢就講緊即係當時喺香港會離開香港嘅人，佢哋一啲即係精神狀態，佢哋嘅心事咧，即係佢哋諗緊啲咩咧咁。So let's begin。咁我哋正式開始啦。Read to resist Day 191。當閱讀也是抗爭第191日。A Concise History of Hong Kong by John Mark Carroll。香港簡史，從殖民地到特別行政區。著者高馬可，譯者林立偉。Although they must have reinforced the Chinese community's resentment of colonial rule, the effects of the Second Opium War and the emergency measures taken during the war on Hong Kong's Chinese community are somewhat harder to characterize. Partly in response to Governor General Ye's order to leave the colony, in early 1857, some 5,000 Chinese left Hong Kong. After Anglo-French forces occupied Canton in December 1857, many Chinese left Hong Kong from January 1858 through October 1861. In July 1858 alone, some 20,000 artisans, builders, laborers, and tailors left Hong Kong. As historian Yong Fan Chun has argued, however, anti-foreignism did not necessarily entail Chinese national consciousnesses. Any attempts to attribute these mass departures to a sense of Chinese patriotism or loyalty to the Qing government are also complicated by the fact that the departures were not always voluntary. For example, the exodus in July 1858 appears to have been partly a response to threats by magistrates in nearby Chinese villages who declared that if the Chinese in Hong Kong did not leave, their relatives in China would be punished as rebels. Even in China, Ye's prohibitions against food being exported to Hong Kong were rarely obeyed, and the British encountered no significant resistance when they took over Kowloon Peninsula in January 1861. 第二次鴉片戰爭和戰時實行的緊急措施，必然會令華人對殖民統治更加深惡痛絕，但他們對於香港華人所造成的影響很難簡單概括。1857年初，有約5000名華人離開香港，部分原因是響應兩廣總督葉明琛要求華人離開這個殖民地的命令。1857年12月，英法聯軍佔領廣州後，由1858年1月至1861年10月間，許多華人從香港遷走，單是1858年7月就有2萬多名工匠、建築工、勞工和裁縫離開。但是如歷史學家蔡榮芳所說，排外主義不一定引發華人的民族意識。如果以為這些華人大舉離開是出於愛國意識，或因為他們效忠清廷的話，不能忽視一個令情況變得複雜的事實，那就是華人離港並非全出於自願。例如1858年7月，有大批華人離港，部分原因似乎是附近中國鄉村的縣官威脅他們，如不離開香港，他們在中國的親人就會被當作漢奸治罪。葉明琛禁止向香港輸出食物的命令，即使在中國也鮮有人遵守。而英國人在1861年1月接管九龍半島時，也沒有遇到重大抵抗。Many Chinese in fact collaborated actively with the British during the war. For example, the welfare brothers Li Sing and Li Liang, only recently arrived in Hong Kong, quickly sided with the British and French by providing money and porters. For their efforts, the Li family received part of the war indemnity, including some pieces from the Imperial Summer Palace in Beijing. Finally, Boring, who was partly responsible for the war, enjoyed great popularity among some parts of the Chinese community. When he left the colony in May 1859, the Western community ignored his departure. The Chinese community, however, sent 2 deputations to see him off and showered him with praise and gifts. 事實上，許多中國人在戰爭期間積極與英國人合作，例如殷商、李升和李亮兄弟初到香港，就向英法兩國提供資金和募集壯丁，與英國人和法國人連成一氣。由於他們的功勞，李家分得部分戰爭賠款，以及掠自北京圓明園的珍寶。最後，對於挑起戰爭責無旁貸的寶靈，在一些華人社群中民望極高。他在1859年5月離任時，歐籍人對他不理不睬，華人卻派出2個代表團送行，對他極盡讚譽並送上厚禮。Now this is the end of the reading today。咁今日就讀到呢度啦。And it's so interesting。我覺得真係超級有趣啦。You looking back like all these years， 你望翻咗咁多年，and here is still like emphasizing how the Hong Kongers were not really sort of refusing or fighting against the colonial rule in some sense。咁都係見到即係好似即係香港人喺即係去抵抗呢一個英國嘅殖民啦，或者即係譬如再佔埋九龍嘅時候，其實大家都係唔係話超級地有好多嘅掙扎啦咁樣樣。And it's not I'm beginning to think like this is in our blood, like in our DNA. We are very like, how do you say that in English? It's kind of like going with the flow kind of people. I mean, we're definitely not chill. Like we're not like relaxed people, right? I mean, we are hardworking and crazy perfectionists and idealists in all sorts of areas and business sectors, whatever. And 即係我覺得香港人好有趣，即係我哋嘅即係自古以嚟我哋嘅血裡面都係即係呢一種咁，但係我哋其實又唔係 hea 嘅喎，即係我哋唔係嗰啲即係休養生息嘅人啦，即係我哋都係啲好鬼衝好鬼搏嘅人啦，但係喺即係政治嘅呢件事上面，或者即係係咯，俾人佔領，好似大家係即係冇乜反應咁樣。Until now that we are actually fighting against the Chinese Communist Party fiercely， 直至而家就係我哋係超級極之勇武咁樣去對抗呢一個中共啦咁樣。So it's just kind of like just to read it and to see what is going on right now， 咁就係睇翻歷史啦，跟住然後對比翻而家發生嘅事啦，咁 it's just yeah it makes me laugh a little bit, cry a little bit, angry a little bit, like all these complications, like complex cocktail of emotions。咁係啦，睇到即係咁樣去比較嘅時候，都會即係會覺得好笑啦，又覺得好傷感啦，又會覺得好心痛啦，都會覺得好嬲啦，但係即係。喺呢個複雜嘅情感係即係由即係歷史裏面我哋都可以見到其實呢樣嘢。And one more thing is that like it talks about how like even though the Hong Kong people were leaving at the time, most of them were not voluntarily leaving the country。咁亦都提到即係當時離開香港嘅人其實好多都唔係自願離開㗎啦。It mentioned about how the Chinese government were threatening to kill, people。From Hong Kong, like their cousins in China or their relatives in China， 咁即係我哋見到又係一啲即係好中共嘅手法啦，就係即係如果你唔離開香港，就會去搞你哋即係喺大陸嘅屋企人啊咁樣樣。So and it seems like there are things that really haven't changed, like in that sort of mentality of the Chinese ruling regime。咁即係好似係有啲嘢係確實係即係自古以嚟流傳落嚟咧。上邊嗰啲咁樣嘅管理階層都係用呢啲咁嘅手段同呢啲手法嘅咁樣樣。Right now, people talk about like how so many Hong Kongers are leaving Hong Kong, and people use the word migration or immigration, and letting it sound like they are leaving voluntarily. But I want to remind you, they don't. 咁而家都有，即係大家都知道有好多所謂我哋講移民潮啦，即係咁樣咁我有時都唔中意用移民呢個字，因為我覺得即係好似係大家好自願去做呢件事，但我想大家都記得其實離開咗嘅人，佢哋都唔係自願離開嘅。少數係即係嗰啲藍絲走去攞着數嗰啲就唔好講啦，即係咁樣。咁但係即係好多真係而家離開咗人都唔係自願離開嘅咁。So they might not be facing the same sort of threats。That people were facing back in the 19th century。當然即係而家離開嘅人，佢哋面對嘅嗰一種狀況，未必係好似當年第二次鴉片戰爭嘅時候，呢啲香港人面對嘅一啲嘅要挾啦。But it's the same, like they were being threatened in a lot of other ways。咁但係即係同樣地，我哋呢一啲離開嘅人都係受到唔同嘅壓迫同埋唔同嘅威脅啦，咁樣樣。Especially for people who have kids right now。咁直且特別就係有小朋友嘅家庭啦。We know that like the education system is being hijacked by the Chinese Communist Party already。咁我哋知道即係教育制度基本上係已經冇得救㗎啦，俾佢騎劫咗㗎啦咁樣樣。So if you have kids， 如果你有小朋友 ，you wouldn't want them to be educated in a school that is run by the Chinese Communist Party. That is the end of the story. Period。咁如果你有細路，你基本上唔會想佢喺即係中共控制嘅學校裏面讀書啦，即係咁。所以有能力嘅朋友即係盡量走得，即係有小朋友嘅都會走啦咁樣樣。And there are other issues as well。咁亦都有其他嘅情況啦。咁this new cultural revolution right now。咁而家即係呢種新嘅文革嘅方式，就係 they make sure certain people in certain career would not be able to make a living if you were involved in the protests in 2019。咁而家呢種做法仲有就係即係佢哋會確保某一啲行業嘅人，如果你係2019年曾經有參與過抗爭啊、抗議啊咁樣樣，咁其實佢哋都會想盡辦法令到你唔可以又繼續維持你嘅生計啦咁樣樣。So this particularly line with like every or any jobs, any work that is related with freedom of expression, freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of academic research that sort of thing。咁所以即係所有同即係言論自由、學術自由、表達自由有關嘅行業都全部即係全軍覆沒啦咁樣。Yeah, so this is the reading of today。咁今日就讀到呢度啦。咁 and then I'll see you again tomorrow。咁我哋聽日會再見，拜拜。